Hello class, welcome to the Human Behavior class. I am Dr. Pam Turner and I am so glad that you are watching my class or watching the video later. Thank you. So this is the 21st of October and I'm going to go ahead and throw a shout out. I have a birthday this weekend, so when you see me next week I'll be older and wiser. I don't know, but definitely I do have a birthday coming up. So this is chapter 9, and again, we're talking about gender, gender identity, gender expression, and sexism. So I think that we definitely know that we have seen more people be open regarding their sexuality than ever in my lifetime. So I'm not gonna. We can't say that this is that people have always been. This is not a new thing. That's what I want to share. It's not a new thing. Gay, lesbianism, non-binary, those are not new terms. We're just definitely hear them more, and people are a lot less afraid to express who they truly are. So again, as working in this field, we do need to make sure that we are aware of our clients and who they are and how they identify themselves. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a story. Okay, so Frank and Linda, both raised in religious families on farms, met in their teens, got married from 18 and 20, right? That's when we got married back then. They had identical twins, John and Kevin. This was in 1965, same year that I was born, okay? So then what happened is when the twins were 7 years old, she noticed their foreskin was closing, making it hard for them to urinate. The pediatrician explained this condition called pemiosis was not rare and easily remedied by circumcision. Okay, cut off the foreskin. So the next morning after the surgery, they got a phone call, and the hospital said, "Is it an emergency? Please, we need to see you right now." So when they got there, they found that the doctor had burned John's penis. He was one of the twins. Linda remembered how shocked and to numbness. The doctor seems reluctant to give a full explanation, but it would, in fact, be months later the couple would learn it was caused by electrocardial needle, right? A device sometimes used for circumcision, etc. The mechanical malfunction, or the error of the doctor caused caused John's penis to be burnt. It caught on fire. It was blackened, said Linda when she saw the photo. It was like a little string. So then they were very upset of what to do. They had no idea. Again, this is back in 1965. They were told that it might be possible to construct a penis from skin grafts, but the penis would look nor function like a normal penis. It was only purpose would be for urination. Frank and Linda thought their kids would never have a normal life. So they met with a famous physician who began to conduct transsexual surgery. Now this is the 60s, remember? Okay, so again, we talk about it now, but it's been going on for quite a while. Remember, the state of practice was unfamiliar and primitive, so the physician decided that he would do corrective care to change John's gender from male to female, from male to female. He said that gender identity wasn't established until they were about 3, and that is true. We still believe that now. My gender identity happens about 3. And basically to take him home and raise him as a girl. Okay, so then when he was 2, he went under a surgical castration where they removed the rest of the penis. They slit open the scrotum in between the midline and removed the testes. They enclosed the tissue to assemble a labia, right? The urethra was formed, okay? And over the next years, Frank and Linda desperately tried to make John, now called Joan, act like a female and develop a female gender identity. The famous physician, and again, this was common back then, said, if we treat him like a girl, he'll act like a girl. He was given female hormones starting at the age of 12. The drugs were completely in her male system, right? Her male endocrine system. So she's getting female hormones as opposed to the rise in testosterone that we see. Okay, at that point, Joan decided that henceforth she would live her life as she chose. She wore masculine clothes, refused to fuss with her hair. She transferred to a technical school. She was dubbed a cave woman and was openly told, "You're a boy," okay, by her friends. So what we're surprised is that the parents finally explained it to Joan that he used to be John. And after the initial relief and shock, there was relief, like, oh my gosh, I always felt like a man anyway. Okay, so later on he went back to have a penis reconstructed. Again, so this might be the early 70s. Okay, so when he was 21, he had a penis that appeared to be more realistic. Nerve transplants provided some sensation. When he was 23, he met a woman who already had kids, and at 25, he adopted her kids. Okay, so again, looking at the sexual reassignment, his surgery, his hope was to prevent this from happening to other people. And unfortunately, John killed himself in 2004 when he was 38. So we've learned from that, and this is not the only story. This is probably kind of a summary of many of the stories back during that time, that despite what I had between my legs, my gender identity was not formed by what I have between my legs. My gender identity is how I see myself, how I feel on the inside. The term gender dysphoria literally means that I don't agree with the gender that I was born with. I'm unhappy with my gender that I was assigned at birth. So there's a term, intersex. I know intersex used to be that awful word, hermaphrodite. Okay, so let me go back. So there are many other examples of people who have a mixture of male and female predispositions and configuration of reproductive structure. Such a person is referred to a pseudo-hermaphrodite or intersex. A true hermaphrodite is a person who is born with fully formed ovaries and fully formed testes, which is exceptional rare. Okay, so again, the term is intersex. That means that you have some sort of the both male and female parts, right? So then the Intersex Society of North America in 2008, right, and the National Institute of Health, the NIH, began to really look at these decisions. Again, this is about 2008. Okay, so then we realized that there are different ways of addressing our gender, different ways of gender expression is how I show my gender. With the gender that I show to society. Okay, a lot of other things when it comes to expressing their gender. So in Western culture, when babies are born, the genitalia is used to determine their biological sex. If I have a penis, I'm deemed a boy. If I have a vagina, I'm deemed a girl. Today, we know that gender is much more complicated than that. Our biology, gender identity, gender expression all intersect. Okay, that's the gender spectrum. So one person can be born female with XX chromosomes, identify herself as a woman, act female, and have sex with a man. Whereas another woman can be born with the same XX chromosomes, and she identifies as a woman, acts masculine, and has sex with both men and women. Okay, so another term you'll see is transgenderism. So transgenderism includes people whose appearance and behaviors do not conform to traditional gender roles. People who have sex and gender different are referred to as transgender, okay? Because their gender is at odds. So I'm going to use, let's go to a website where I usually really explain these, I think, better than a textbook, and certainly it's shorter than a textbook. I do like this one, and I suggest that you go back and you really search this link. It's the ABCs of the LGBTQIA+ population. So it really just kind of gives you some of those terms that maybe you're not sure about if you're not a member of the community or a supporter of someone in the LGBTQI category. So then, this is by Michael Gold. And he said when it came out 10 years ago, this is from 2019, it's pretty recent, there were only 4 letters, L, G, B, and T, okay? So since then, the letters have been changing. We've been adding new categories. So times have changed, right? And now the LGBTQ really is not enough. We've added a lot of extra letters to that. And even amongst the LGBTQI community, there are different terms and different variations of how we use the term. So if you're working with a client and you are unsure of how they label themselves or how they see themselves, their gender identity, it's really okay just to ask. To ask what your pronoun is, or to ask how, what I should call you. It's really, really okay. Okay, so let's just kind of look at some of those terms. So of course, then we've got gay and lesbian. Okay, so that starts with the basic. Either I'm gay or lesbian, and that was in the 60s and 70s. And that was either you were straight or gay. Nothing on, I'm sorry, you were gay, it was men, and lesbian was women. And there was nothing in between. Okay, bisexual then is someone who's attracted to people of both genders, okay, or other gender identities. So it's not a way station from straight to gender. Okay, so there's a lot, again, stereotypes of bisexuality. So the bisexual erasure talks about the different ways that we can identify ourselves. So it's not just I like men or I like women. It means that I'm attracted to maybe someone who identifies themselves as female or identifies themselves as male, or maybe they're gender non-binary, they don't identify either way. Pansexual, that term means that I am attracted to people of all genders, gender identities. It doesn't really matter. Pan means all. And rejecting the gender binary that is sometimes implied by bisexuality. Okay, so that means I will fall in love with people for people. I'm not looking for a particular gender. I'm just looking for someone with the traits that I am attracted to. I had someone tell me once that they were attracted to attractive people. And it didn't matter if they were gay or straight, that was just their, it didn't matter if it was a man or a woman, but that's what they are attracted to. Asexual, remember when you ever put A in front of any word, it negates the word. So people who are asexual, those are people who have little or no sexual attraction at all. Okay? Not to be accused with aromantic people. So romantic, again, the A negates it. So aromantic people means that I am not interested in a romantic relationship. So asexual is I'm not interested in sex. A romantic means I'm not interested in romance. And that means not either gender, or it doesn't matter how you identify yourself, I'm still not attracted to you romantically or sexually. Okay? Let's see here. So let's go back. Demisexual, someone who generally doesn't experience sexual attraction unless they have formed a strong emotional base, right? So demisexual means that I'm not sexually attracted to you until we have a romantic relationship. Gray sexual, right? Someone who occasionally experiences sexual attraction, but usually does not. Okay, so there's a lot of gray area in there between asexuality and sexual identity. Cisgender are the people that happen to be born with the same sex, and they identify themselves as the same gender they were assigned. So if I am female, I have a vagina and identify myself as female, then I can be labeled cisgender. Okay, so that's my gender identity matches what I was assigned at birth. That is not a term of who I sleep with, that's an identity term is how I identify myself. Transgender, again, a wide range term for people whose gender identity or gender expression differs from the biological sex that they were assigned at birth. Transgendered, so it says it's not a word but often used as one, transgendered, but transgender is okay. Trans or trans plus, those are two umbrella terms for non-cisgender identities. So that is when my anatomy doesn't match my identity. So if I'm born with a vagina and I identify as a male, then I can be considered trans plus. Non-gender conforming. So again, this is not a matter of my sexuality, it's a matter of gender, boy or girl, or non-binary, right? So then, that's one who expresses gender outside of the normal traditional goals with masculinity or femininity. So I'm not going to conform to what the world or what society says how a woman should behave or how a woman should dress. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily gay, straight, or it just means that is my gender, okay, not my sexuality. Again, non-binary, what we'll see sometimes is non-binary is labeled as an X, so that means I'm not labeling myself as a boy or a girl. So a person identifies as neither female nor male or female and sees themselves outside the gender binary. That is sometimes shortened to NB, or a notable example, Taylor Manchin, a financial analyst on the show Billions, who is believed to be a first gender non-binary character on television, is played by a non-binary actor. Asia Kate is played by the non-binary actor Asia Kate Dillon. Again, someone who is not labeling themselves as boy, girl, and the X. The X means that I'm not going to label myself with either one of those. Okay, so then gender queer. Again, you can see that. Another term to drive someone whose gender identity is outside the strict male-female binary. Gender fluid, or gender fluidity, of course, that means that, again, it is my gender, not my sexual orientation. So my gender is fluid. So today I may feel more like a man and may do some more male characteristics, and next week I may feel someplace else. Again, it's how I identify myself as my gender. Gender neutral, okay? So someone who prefers not to describe a specific gender, but prefers they, okay? The terms, MAB, that's a male assigned at birth, female assigned at birth, or unassigned at birth. That's what that stands for. And many in our larger states, we really do have terms that children can label themselves as, or parents can label their children as X, non-binary, and they decide they're going to wait until the child is able to identify themselves. Okay. So a common term that you'll see, and I'm not really sure how this kind of came into this discussion, because our Native Americans, our first people, have always identified themselves this way. So the term is two-spirited, okay? So that is, again, in a tribe, a family with all-girl generations, makes like one daughter to try to be their son, trying to dry up their ovaries, okay? So what we're looking at is many of our Native American population, they've always seen themselves as having two spirits, both male and female, right? And then again, this is all the time, not just new, so it's always been around, but now has been kind of been included in that LGBTQI conversation, okay? Other cultures have similar roles. So in the Persian Gulf, Oman had a class of biological men that were called Zanit, okay, and they were exempt from strict Islamic rules that restrict men's interaction from women because they were not considered men. They sat with the females at the wedding tables, and they could see the bride's faces. They didn't sit with the man, so they were men who were definitely identified with or as a female population, okay. Another example is in the Haraja of India. Again, the Haraja are men who undergo ritual castration, in which all or part of their genitals are removed, and they are believed to have a special power to curse or bless male children. They dress as women, even though they don't really try to pass as women. Their mannerisms are exaggerated, and some even sport facial hair. Okay, and again, in India, they're neither considered male nor female, or just a unique habit of a third gender. Okay, so we see that this has been happening long time, nothing new in our society, nothing that's nothing that we haven't seen before. Again, it's just definitely much more of a time that we're actually sharing these things and actually having open conversations. Okay, so again, we talk about in childhood how we raise boys different than girls. You know, boys don't cry, boys don't play with dolls, all that good stuff, as families used to say. I think we're seeing a change of that, right? You know, remember years ago, Target took away their boy and girl section So they're no longer boy or girl toys. So that way you don't have to worry about your child buying a toy based on their gender. They can buy whatever toy they like. But we do know that by the age of 3, you have identified your gender, okay, your gender identity. And that many comes from society, your parents, and gender identity, again, is how I see myself. Okay, so in adolescence, right, this is when bodies change drastically and our sexual desires emerge. So of course, Erickson would say in these years, that is when my identity, my role identity, who I am as a person, as well as my sexual identity are both developed. By the age of 21, I should have fully developed my gender identity as well as my sexual orientation, according to Erickson. Again, cross cultures. So many, most cultures have some sort of rite of passage at this age, right? So gender and birth positions have been also associated with certain duties and privileges. Sons have been more highly valued than daughters. Family lineages are passed down through the males, right? So the prospective roles for daughters were less rewarding. Females did not come into a position of authority or respect until they assumed the role of a mother-in-law. Okay, and again, many years ago, China used to really only enforce the one-child law. We don't see that enforced anymore, but in the one-child law, they wanted a son. Sons were seen as more valuable. In many of our Asian communities, the son is his responsibility to take care of his parents. So if you have a daughter and she marries, the assumption is that you will take care of his parents. So if you could only have one child, you definitely wanted a boy in the Asian population. So what that looks like, though, is that we saw, back many years ago, that there were lots of female births that were, children born female that were hidden or abandoned because the parents wanted a boy. And if you know anything about the Chinese government, it really had to do with when you're born in China, you have to register. So if you don't register, you're not counted. And you are only allowed to register one child. So you were able to have more than one child, however, they didn't exist. That means they couldn't go to school, they couldn't get any benefits. So in China, when you registered, that's how you were considered a person. And if you weren't a person, you didn't exist. Okay. So not to say that many wealthy families in China did have more than one, and many people who had later left China and went to different countries had one, but it really was about making sure that the government could support, you could support that one child. We have seen things have changed because we now have a lot of single children, only kids, and we're not finding enough to match up, right? So we're having not enough couples to match up and procreate because of what happened a few years ago, but that's no longer the case in most parts of China. Okay, again, we're just looking at around the world how we have seen difficulties, right? So while Arabian women have had their share of difficulties in negotiating between American values and the ideas of their Middle Eastern heritage, they've been more resilient and resourceful in developing individualized solutions to conflicts. So again, we see, especially as we've seen the change in Afghanistan, prior to anything happening, women were deemed as lesser than, they didn't need school. However, it wasn't, that was how they were seen outside the home, but inside the home, it was the husband's job to provide. So not like it is in America, it is truly the husband's job to provide if he takes a wife. He has to be financially able to support her, and not only her needs, her wants. So that's the rationale behind it. I'm not taking sides, just explaining to you the rationale. So when women, especially like Dubai or other of the Middle Eastern countries, got the right to drive, it wasn't as if they'd been sitting home the whole time. If they wanted to go to the store, it was their husband's responsibility to take them to the store. If they wanted a new dress, it was their husband's responsibility. So the thought was before that there was not a need for women to drive because that was the husband's job to take care of them. And again, now women are allowed to drive, but the fact that it is the husband's job to provide hasn't changed. Okay, and then as adulthood, right? We have very traditional gender role socialization. I am, again, I'm 56. I remember starting my first job fresh out of college, and that was probably 92. Yeah, 92. So I know I'm dating you guys. You probably weren't born then. But definitely, I remember that I worked for a school, and the principal required all of the secretaries to wear dresses or skirts. Pants were not allowed by the secretarial staff. Talk about genders, right? Wow. And this was, I lived in South Florida, so this wasn't a small town, this wasn't a little bitty place, this was truly how secretaries, who were again only women, were taught, and you were taught to be pretty and be attractive and take care of your job. Okay, and people didn't complain. There wasn't even a complaint about it, which even still surprises me. Okay, so the second disadvantage for women is when they work outside the home, which most of us do now. They still do the majority of housework and childcare. So women, again, usually work outside the home, and we still have the majority of the chores in the household. Again, this doesn't apply to everybody, but the majority of people will need to serve 8 people. So when we really look at that theory of men make more than women, that is true, but understand the caveats that go along with that. The reason that men make more than women is men spend more of the time in the office than women do because of the family obligation. Men also choose careers. So example, if we look at doctors, it is not that we see male and female doctors in the same position making more than the males making more. What we see is, if we look at doctors overall, is women choose professions in the medical field that gives them the time to stay home. So they're going to choose many times to be a pediatrician or a gynecologist that gives me that 9 to 5, so I can pick up my kids after school and make dinner. While as men, many times are operating emergency surgeons, right? Things that they'll work, have more flexibility in their hours. So when we say that men make more than women, that is not when we look at the side-by-side equal jobs, it is overall because women spend more of their time at home. And again, that is not a bad thing. We forget the importance of raising children, and whether it's done by mothers or dads, children need to be raised. So that is part of our society. That's what we do. Is, we're not the birds where we have the egg and 2 weeks later make it fly away. We rear our children until they're 18 at least. Someone has to be responsible for raising children. Okay. So we're looking at, again, the differences other than their biological predisposition. There are others, okay? So there's no difference in regards of IQ, right? So IQ has been going around, a debate is going forever and forever, but there's no difference in standard IQ. So we would use the WAIS, the WAIS, if we're looking at adults, the WIS, WSC, if we're looking at children younger than 16. An average IQ is 100, it has a standard deviation of 9, so between 91 and 109 is a standard IQ. So what we do know is that sometimes females display better verbal skills than males in some area, okay? But the differences are so small that it doesn't really matter. Men display a better grasp of spatial manipulation and understanding, for example, arranging blocks and patterns. Differences in some of those areas surface in childhood, and some of the discrepancies continue into adulthood. Okay, but however, the training can enhance spatial manipulation skills for both men and women. In the past, males scored higher than females on standardized testing. Currently, they perform similar to the same. Looking at this, we do know that what we saw in the last 10 years, and I'm not sure what it looks like now in many classrooms, is we really began to separate the boys from the girls and those at the middle school area. Because we know that the girls develop earlier, and many girls, their concern is attracting the boys, right? So if the girls are 13 and the boys are 13, the boys aren't that mature yet. Girls many times have fully developed and boys are still not there. And we found that usually caused a lot of classroom disruption and that children learn better at those ages if they were separated. Okay, so I've seen them be separated only the core classes or seen them separated totally, but that's where we're seeing that increase of girls having those math statistics. Of course, we now have a big push on STEM, having females in the STEM careers. Okay, so other studies indicate that females are better at remembering things such as males, but again, that is not necessarily true. So what we find more is those skills have to do with how we were raised as opposed to any kind of biological difference. The nature-nurture controversy still continues. That means whether it's innate, so the nature part means I was born with that, or nurture means that is how I was raised. Okay. Communication styles. I actually do a seminar on networking, and one of the things I teach in my seminar, especially, is how to work with business men and women, and how the difference is women are usually more verbal. And again, we're not sure if that's nature or nurture. However, so in a business meeting, a woman may text, and in personal relationships too, but mainly in business, a woman may text her boss or another male colleague, and she is going to use a lot more words than the man does. So she has shared this idea with him, and his response many times is like, yeah, let's go for it. And women are like, what? What does he mean? What does that really mean? So from a male's point of view, that's what he means. Again, not all males, but when working with males, those are some things that we need to know. It doesn't mean he doesn't care about you in the relationship. It doesn't mean that he doesn't want to talk to you. It just means that many times men are they're less verbal than women. Okay? Be aware of that when you're working with male or female colleagues, or definitely in your personal relationship. Okay? So seeing people as individuals, right, as opposed to looking at the gender barriers. We should learn to treat people as individuals, of course. There are women who can be more more masculine, and women who can be more feminine. There are men who can be more feminine and more masculine. However, again, that is just gender identity, right? Okay. So then, when it comes to women and sexism, we've seen a lot of things, a lot of violence that definitely only happens to women or puts women more in danger. As a rule, women are still the smaller and as well as the not as strong as men. So that definitely looks at how then crimes are sometimes happen, or things happen. Again, sexual harassment. So that Me Too movement that has changed how women and men both change in the workplace, has really brought an eye to the sexual harassment. And I'll tell you again, so I'm 56, and when I went to college, and many times when I worked early jobs, it was assumed that it was okay for men to do certain things because they were just joking, and women didn't dare say anything. We just didn't. I was in college, and I remember a male professor said to the front of the class how attractive he thought I was, and he would call me up to his desk, and he would touch me at his desk in front of the entire class. It never dawned on me at that time. I was in grad school, and that was, again, probably 90, 91. It didn't occur to me at all that I should report that. That was part of the generation that I grew up in, and a lot of people grew up in. So when you look at now, my daughters would never let that happen, and my son would never dream of that. That's definitely a change, and that Me Too has really definitely changed that, where women have come out and shared their stories. Okay. Sexual harassment can be both male or female, right? So in 2011, 16.3% of the complaints were filed by males. Okay, so that males, either they were harassed by other males or females as well. Supreme Court decision of 93 reinforced the seriousness of hostile and offensive working environment in one sexual harassment. This was the Supreme Court. The president of a national truck company, Harris had been a retail employee at the Hardy Company. She accused Harris of asking her and other females to retrieve coins out of his pants pocket, suggesting Harris accompanied them to the local Holiday Inn to negotiate their raise. And often responded her like, you're just a woman, how do you know that? He also called her a dumbass woman and suggested she wanted an account by having sex with a client. The lower courts found that Hardy's behavior toward Harris was not so severe. However, it did go to the Supreme Court, and at that time, Sandra Day O'Connor wrote that the client had that the employer had physically, psychologically injured the client. Okay, so that law now is out, and we definitely have seen a change in workplace, especially since in my lifetime. I can definitely tell you that. Again, sexual harassment in the workplace indicates that sometimes up to 70% of women and 7% of all women and men together have experienced some sexual harassment. Okay. Again, sexist language that we still see. Okay, so now I teach the term ombudsman, and ombudsperson is the person who is employed by the state that works in a nursing home. And if you have a complaint about someone in your facilities, I mean, you're a loved member or a loved one or a family member, or if you're a social worker or a counselor, and you have concerns about the way that someone is being treated in a nursing home setting, you call the ombudsperson. And that's been called the ombudsman forever. Our male men are now male persons, or male people. So we've learned to really take some of the gender out of the conversations, out of the language that we use, because now we know those jobs equally exist for men and women. Okay. Sexual assault, again, is something that we see more often with females. However, again, it does happen with men as well. Okay. We do know that the majority of sexual assault is by someone that you know. The amount of stranger rape or stranger assault is very rare. So most often it's someone I've gone on a date with, a family member, all of those things. Okay, so sexual assault involves a wide range of victimization, separate from rape or even attempted rape. These include attempted attacks generally toward unwanted sexual contact between the victim and the offender. A sexual assault may entail the use of force or the verbal threat of force, unwanted grabbing or fondling, or the actual sexual assaults. Okay, so if you're a counselor, a social worker looking at a sexual rape survivor, we definitely do use trauma-informed care. So that means when they come in the room, we expect that they have some trauma. So we call them survivors, not victims. Okay, the victim implies that somehow, something bad happened to her and she's a poor innocent victim. Survivors say that yes, it did happen, but I can survive this. Okay. Again, the incidence of rape. Okay, so we looked at rapes in 2011. 93% of these were completed and 7% were attempted. Over one study found that 20% of female students, they had been forced to have intercourse, have sexual intercourse, most often by someone known to them. Okay. And many times those guys, they go unreported, and we look at college campuses especially. College campuses like to keep their crime rates down. So if many parents, when I was sending my children to school, we're looking at the crime of the area as well as the school. And of course, I don't want to send my daughter to a school that has a very high rate of sexual assault. So many times in the past, they have been not reported or handled at the school level, and a police report was not made. We are seeing some change of that again as well. We're seeing the importance of safety amongst all students when it comes to being on campus. Okay. So some of the theoretical theories behind rape. So we've got, she asked for it, right? That's one of those myths, which is not true. Okay, I've told my daughters I can dress how I want to dress. I can say how I want to say, but if I say no, that is my right. Okay, so it's not that she caused it. Somehow that describes that men are just so sex crazed that they can't control themselves. I've talked a lot about in the school system, the dress code, right? The dress code is most often written for women, written for girls, right? The spaghetti straps, the shorts being the right length, right? The body parts being covered up. Most of those, again, are meant to determine how girls dress. because, again, we're working on the assumption that boys, oh my gosh, if I see a girl's belly button, I can't concentrate in class. And instead of teaching girls to maybe cover themselves, we should teach our boys that that's the woman's right. Okay, so no one deserves to be raped. No one did anything to want to be raped. Okay. So again, the psychotherapy, the rapist psychotherapy, this theoretical orientation concerns the psychopathology of rape. This view purposes that the rape is emotionally distorted, or the rapist is emotionally disturbed, or mentally unbalanced, right? That he's sick. Okay, and that way that blames no one. And we definitely do have rapists who have mental health issues. We're not going to pretend that isn't true. That is definitely the case. Especially when it comes to pedophiles, that is the only crime where people who've committed that crime can no longer be around that population. They can't live near schools. They can't live near churches. We don't have bank robbers who are released who can't live near banks, right? So we definitely know that there are some parts of sexual harassment when it comes to rapists, that definitely there's a mental health component to that population. Okay. Again, the gender myths about rape. Okay, so again, what women think, and these are just not accurate. Okay, and many times women do feel ashamed. They do feel dirty. They do feel like that somehow it's their fault. So in this, as we work with women in general, we really need to remind them that it's not their fault. Okay, there are some things I can do to definitely protect myself more, but there's not a lot I can do to protect myself against someone who's determined to hurt me. So of course I can I can carry a weapon. I know it talks about roofies, and definitely we've taught people to not let anyone bring them a drink, right? Don't leave your drink alone because someone can slip something in your drink, and those are things that we definitely teach. Okay, so I said earlier the myth is that only strangers are potential rapists, and according to the Bureau, 57% of the sexual assaults were committed by someone the survivor knew. And only 20% were their intimate partners, so someone in a relationship. And yes, you can be raped in a marriage. Okay, I'm talking about the profile of rapists. Again, so we're realizing that it's many times not about it's not about wanting sex, it's about the control. It's the desire to have control, to have power over someone. Okay, the characteristics we see sometimes is they ignore personal space, their hands all over you, abuse drugs and alcohol, sexualized conversations, are dominant, aggressive, rigid gender roles, use threats in a display of anger, they have quick-tempered, they're sadists, that means they get satisfaction by hurting someone, they're narcissists, they really only look at what's best for them and don't even have empathy for the person that they have hurt, and they're often impersonal and aloof emotionally. So when it does come to that population, we really do treating rapists, people who are not deemed having a mental health issue. It is making sure that the client is that the perpetrator understands that their behavior has hurt someone. People with that conduct disorder as children and antisocial as adults really do not understand the fact that their behaviors have hurt somebody. We teach them how to develop empathy. We know if we see little kids who are definitely showing those conduct-like behaviors or hurting the dog, or doing those kind of things, we want to make sure that we teach them empathy as young as we can. Okay, again, this talks about the perpetrator. The cycles of violence, definitely do need to know those stages. On the test and in the real world, we see those 3 stages always. It's by Lenore Walker. There's always the tension building, then the battering, and then the honeymoon, or sometimes called loving contrition. Okay, so many times is, we see this get closer and closer and closer. So I have been battered. It happens maybe once a year, and then now it's happening every 6 months, and now it's happening every 3 months. And we do know that many women don't leave the relationship, and for lots of different reasons, right? Why does she stay? Emotional dependence. So, you know, he didn't rape you or he didn't hurt you on your first date, right? He didn't beat you up on the first date. He treated you very kindly. So once he gets you in that position, or her, gets you in that position of dependence emotionally on him, it's purposeful. It's very much purposeful. He's many times isolated you from your family and your friends, saying things like, oh, I just love you. No one but you. I don't want to share you. The lack of self-confidence, again, that comes from the words I've heard from my parents many times, and again, what the perpetrator continues to tell me, that I'm fat, I'm stupid, no one will want me, etc., etc. Okay? Lack of power, that is because men are physically stronger than us, okay? And then fear of the abuser. So a lot of times it's guilt, because he'll say to you, I wouldn't have done that if you'd made dinner on time, I wouldn't have hurt you. Look what you made me do. Okay, and again, those are things that are almost brainwashing, have told the person over and over again. They have nowhere to go. They've heard horrible stories about those shelters, and I'm not going to a shelter. Fear for her children, of course, and she still loves him. Okay, so I will say that we definitely have seen families who've gotten back together, but it does take therapy on both parts for people to realize that this is not unhealthy. It's an unhealthy relationship. And in the real world, remember, we don't see people in domestic violence situations in the same session. We don't want either one of them coming in sharing something and then later going home and being punished for that. So we can see them separately, but we do not see them ever together. Okay. We forget there's battering in the gay and lesbian community. Gay males report less sexual abuse than lesbian couples, however, more physical violence. So we know, again, as general, males biologically are the stronger of the sexes, right? And that's a biological thing. Not that women are weak, but biologically, men are stronger. So in the gay relationships, what we see often is very, very severe physical injuries on both parts, because if two men are fighting each other, and those emotions attached, there definitely can be much more physical damage than that one. Okay, so empowering women, again, those are things that we can do to empower women and realize it's not their fault. Okay, this was the end of my HBSU subject. Again, it was gender identity, gender roles. I do appreciate you guys with me for covering chapter 9. Okay, and again, the video will be in your, it goes out as an announcement. It's also going to be in your weekly videos, so I'll be posted there shortly today. Be sure, students, that you're keeping up on your discussions as well as keeping up on your responses to your peers. It's been a lovely one, guys. Dr. Pam, out.